The sound of the judge's gavel striking the wood did not sound like justice. It sounded like the closing of a coffin. The court granted full custody of the children and absolute ownership of the marital assets to Mr. Victor Harrington. To Mrs. Elena Vargas, only supervised visitation once a month was given, subject to psychological evaluation. Case closed. The world stopped. My ears were ringing. I looked at the judge, a stern man who did not even have the decency to look me in the eyes while he tore my life apart. Then I looked at Victor Harrington, the telecommunications magnate, the man who appeared on magazine covers as Businessman of the Year. He stood there, smoothing his $3,000 suit with that crooked smile only I knew too well. The smile of a predator who had just devoured its prey. Beside him, his team of 5 lawyers, the sharks of the courtroom, discreetly shook hands. They had won, money had won, corruption had won. I sat alone at my table with my court-appointed lawyer, a nervous young man who had barely spoken 2 words throughout the trial. Victor had bought or intimidated every decent law firm in the city so they would not represent me. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the young man whispered. "We did what we could, but he has too many resources." I stood up. My legs were trembling. I felt such a huge emptiness in my stomach that I thought I would faint right there. "I want to see my children," I said, my voice broken. Victor approached. He smelled of his expensive cologne and victory. He leaned toward my ear, invading my personal space. "You won't see them, Elena," he whispered. "I'm sending them to a boarding school in Switzerland tomorrow. Far from you, far from your mediocrity. And about the alimony, my lawyers made sure you won't get a single cent. After all, you signed that prenuptial agreement when you were so in love." "Victor, please, they are my children," I begged, forgetting my pride. "Not anymore," he said, turning his back on me. "Now they are Harrington heirs. And you go back to being nobody. Go back to the village. Elena, go back to the misery I took you from." He left the courtroom surrounded by his entourage. The judge retired to his chambers, probably to count the bribe. I remained alone in the empty courtroom with the echo of my defeat bouncing off the walls. Victor thought I was alone. He thought my family had abandoned me. He thought my older brother, Alejandro, was, as I had vaguely told him, a government employee who traveled a lot and was never present. What Victor did not know, what his infinite arrogance prevented him from seeing, was that Alejandro was not a simple bureaucrat. Victor believed he had won the war, but he had only awakened a sleeping giant. 1 hour earlier, before entering the courtroom, I had sent a message to Alejandro. It only said 3 words: "He destroyed me." I did not know if the message had arrived. I did not know if my brother, whom I had not seen in 5 years because of Victor's jealousy and prohibitions, would come. I left the courthouse. Outside, it was pouring rain. A grey storm covered the city, reflecting my soul. Victor was on the courthouse steps under an umbrella held by his driver, giving statements to the press. "Justice has prevailed," he said into the microphones. "I have saved my children from an unstable environment." He saw me come out, soaked, defeated, without an umbrella. He laughed and pointed at me so the cameras would capture my humiliation. But then the sound of the rain was interrupted. It was not thunder, it was the roar of engines. Many engines. A caravan of 5 black armored SUVs, the kind used by heads of state or special forces, burst into the courthouse square, mounting the sidewalk and scattering the journalists. The doors opened in unison. 20 men stepped out. They were not private bodyguards. They were tactical operatives. They wore grey uniforms without insignia, but their posture screamed elite military training. They formed a human corridor, and from the central vehicle, Alejandro stepped down. He was not dressed like the simple young man I remembered. He wore a black tactical suit, military boots, and a long trench coat. He had a new scar on his cheek. And his eyes were 2 abysses of controlled fury. Victor stopped laughing. The journalists lowered their cameras, intimidated. Alejandro walked toward me. Victor's men tried to block his path, but Alejandro's operatives moved him aside with brutal and silent efficiency. My brother reached me. He looked at me, saw my tears, saw my wet clothes, saw my broken soul. He took off his trench coat and placed it over my shoulders. It was warm and dry. "Little sister," he said in a deep voice, "forgive me for taking so long. The flight from the Middle East was long. Alejandro took everything from me." I cried against his chest. "The children, the house, he says I'm nobody." Alejandro hugged me tightly. Then he slowly turned toward Victor. Victor, recovering his arrogant composure, stepped down one stair. Who the hell are you? Victor shouted. The new boyfriend? A hired thug? This is federal property. I'll call the police. Alejandro smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a wolf seeing a lame rabbit. Call the police, Victor, said Alejandro. In fact, call the commissioner. Tell him that Commander Alejandro Castillo, Director of National Intelligence Operations, is here. Victor turned pale. Castillo. But Elena's last name is Vargas. Vargas is our mother's surname, said Alejandro, descending the stairs toward him. Castillo is our father's, General Castillo, the one you insulted at the engagement dinner. Remember? You said the military were government lapdogs. Alejandro stopped 1 meter from Victor. Victor Harrington, you just won a corrupt trial. Congratulations. Enjoy it, because I promise you that sentence will be the last legal document in your favor in this life. Are you threatening me? Victor tried to sound brave, but his voice trembled. I am a powerful man. I have money. I have judges on my payroll. You have money, said Alejandro. I have information and I have power. The kind of power that cannot be bought with checks. Victor, the kind that makes people like you disappear from the records. Alejandro turned to his men. Take my sister to the secure vehicle and contact the financial team. I want to execute Operation Free Fall. What does that mean? Victor shouted as they led me away. You can't do anything to me. I'm untouchable. Alejandro stopped before getting into the vehicle. He looked at Victor one last time. In 1 hour, Victor, you will wish you had never won that trial. In 1 hour, you will wish you had returned my sister with an apology. See you at lunch. I know you will celebrate at Le Seal restaurant. My treat. We got into the armored vehicles. The caravan drove off, leaving Victor in the rain, confused but still clinging to his arrogance, thinking they were empty threats. He did not know that his hourglass had just broken. Before I tell you how Alejandro dismantled Victor's life piece by piece in less than 60 minutes, I need to ask you a favor. If you are against corruption and believe that family is the only thing worth burning the world for, give this video a strong like right now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. What happens at the restaurant will leave you standing and applauding. Believe me, divine justice sometimes arrives in armored vehicles. Inside the vehicle, Alejandro served me hot tea from a thermos. He had a mobile office installed in the back with screens, satellite phones, and maps. Alejandro, what are you doing? I asked, wiping my tears. Victor is dangerous. He has the local mafia. He has the judges. Elena, he interrupted me gently. I hunt international terrorists. I dismantle human trafficking networks. A corrupt city businessman is not a rival. He is an appetizer. Alejandro touched a screen. Team Alpha, report. A metallic voice answered. Director, we have accessed Villalobos telecom servers. We have the real accounting books. The ones hidden from the tax authorities. Money laundering, tax evasion, and documented bribes to public officials. Good. And his accounts in the Cayman Islands. Located and frozen under the national security and illicit financing law. The local bank owner owed us a favor. He just executed the early maturity clauses on all of Victor's loans. Technically, he has been bankrupt for 3 minutes. Alejandro looked at me and winked. See, little sister, he is no longer rich. But the children, I said, he wants to take them to Switzerland. They will not leave the country. I have placed a red migration alert on their passports and Victor's. If he tries to step foot in an airport, he will be arrested for attempted child abduction under federal investigation. The caravan stopped in front of Le Seal restaurant, the most exclusive place in the city, located on the top floor of a skyscraper. Ready for the second part? Alejandro asked. I'm scared. Ale. Don't be afraid. Today you are the owner of the board. Let's go. Victor was at the main table, surrounded by his lawyers and his new lover, celebrating with champagne. He laughed loudly, toasting to freedom and getting rid of the burden. That woman didn't even have money left for the bus, Victor said, laughing. You should have seen her face when the judge read the sentence. Suddenly, the doors of the private elevator opened. Alejandro and I entered, but this time we were not alone. We came with 4 uniformed federal agents and 2 government auditors with briefcases. The restaurant fell silent. Victor saw us. He dropped his glass. You again, he shouted, standing up. This is harassment. Manager, get these people out. The manager did not move. He was talking to one of Alejandro's men, nodding pale. Alejandro walked to Victor's table, took an empty chair, turned it around, and sat straddling it, looking Victor in the eyes. I told you we would see each other at lunch. Victor. Get out. shrieked Victor's lover. Don't you know who he is? Oh, we know exactly who he is, said Alejandro. Victor Harrington, a man who, according to my data updated 2 minutes ago, has a bank balance of 0 and a debt of 50 million. Victor turned red. Are you crazy? I have millions. His phone rang. It was his accountant. Victor answered with a trembling hand. What are you saying? Frozen? All of them? It's a mistake. Call the bank. What? The bank executed the mortgage? Victor dropped the phone on the table. He looked at Alejandro with pure terror. What did you do? He whispered. I didn't do anything, said Alejandro, shrugging. I just showed the authorities and the banks the truth about your businesses. It turns out laundering money for cartels is not well regarded by international banks. Victor looked at his lawyers. Do something. Stop him. Sue him. The lead lawyer closed his briefcase. Mr. Harrington, if your accounts are frozen, you cannot pay our fees. And given the severity of the federal charges, we are withdrawing from the case. With permission. The lawyers stood up and left, leaving Victor alone. His lover also stood up discreetly and ran toward the bathroom, disappearing. You are alone, Victor, I said, stepping forward. I no longer felt fear. I felt power. Those are my children, he shouted desperately. The judge gave them to me. That judge, said Alejandro, was just arrested in his office 10 minutes ago for receiving bribes. Your sentence has been annulled. A new trial has been ordered. And guess what? With your accounts frozen and a criminal investigation on you, no judge will give you custody of even a hamster. Alejandro made a signal. The federal agents approached. Victor Harrington, said the lead agent, you are under arrest for money laundering, tax fraud, corruption of officials, and conspiracy. No, you can't do this to me. Victor tried to run toward the terrace, but Alejandro tripped him and Victor fell face first onto the floor. Humiliated in the middle of the luxury restaurant. Alejandro crouched down and whispered in his ear, loud enough for me to hear. This is for my sister's tears. This is for every time you made her feel less. Be grateful that I am a man of the law, Victor, because if I weren't wearing this badge, I would have thrown you out that window. The agents lifted Victor, handcuffed him, and dragged him out. He screamed my name. Elena, help me. I am the father of your children. Forgive me. I looked at him. I looked at the man who 1 hour earlier had laughed at my misfortune. Justice has prevailed, Victor, I said, repeating his words. Enjoy your new life. In the end, Victor was sentenced to 25 years in prison. His assets were seized. The mansion, the cars, the company, everything disappeared to pay his debts and fines. I recovered my children the same afternoon. Alejandro used his influence to grant me immediate temporary custody, which later became permanent. But the final surprise came 1 week later. I was at my parents' house where I was staying. Alejandro arrived with a folder. I have a gift for you, Elena, he said. I opened the folder. They were the deeds to a house. Not Victor's mansion, but a beautiful, bright house near the beach in my name, and the company incorporation document. What is this? I asked. Phoenix Telecommunications, said Alejandro. I bought the legitimate assets of Victor's company at the government auction. I cleaned it up and put it in your name. You knew the business better than he did. You did the numbers. Now it is yours. I cried, not from sadness, but from gratitude. I don't know how to repay you for this, brother. You already paid me, he said, kissing my forehead. You survived and recovered your smile. Today I run my own company. My children grow up happy, far from their father's toxicity. Alejandro continues to save the world in the shadows, but he comes for dinner every Sunday. I learned that sometimes when you think you have lost everything, you are only making space for what you truly deserve, and that you should never underestimate the power of family. Victor won in court for 1 hour, but I won the entire life. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.